The fire erupted suddenly, like a gunshot. It was 4:12 a.m. when Lena Garrett woke to the smell of smoke. At first, she thought it was a nightmare, one of those torturous ones she'd had since her husband's death. But when the floorboards burned under her feet and heat surged through the cracks beneath the door, she knew reality was worse. She lunged toward her son's room, Joshua, 6 years old, her everything, but the door was already swallowed by flames. The moment she touched the handle, the skin on her palm sizzled. She stumbled outside barefoot, in a long t-shirt, her hair wild. The fire devoured their tiny, modest, but beloved home. Neighbors stood at a distance, one calling 911, others just watching. Lena stood on the charred porch, screaming, "Joshua," over and over. But from inside, there was only the crackle of flames and the stench of burning toys. When firefighters pulled out the boy's charred body, Lena didn't scream anymore. She just sat on the ground, leaning against the neighbor's wall like a broken doll. Everything inside her had emptied, as if Joshua had taken with him whatever had kept her in this world. She didn't cry, not because she didn't want to. The tears just wouldn't come. Not at the morgue, not at the funeral, not during the long nights when she lay clutching her son's pajama pants to her chest. He had been her only one. After her husband's car accident, they clung to each other. "Mom, I'm your hero," he'd say before school, and she had believed him. But the village didn't forgive her silence. "Strange, how calm she is," they whispered in the grocery line. "Too quiet. Maybe guilt's eating her up." Did you see how she looked at the firefighters? Like she wasn't even scared. Grief, if it didn't sound familiar, became suspicion. And suspicion, in a small place where everyone knew each other, spread like smoke, slow, sticky, seeping into every corner. When the police called her in a month later, Lena thought maybe they'd found the culprit. Instead, she was the culprit. The interrogation room smelled of coffee and paperwork. They offered her a chair, water, and lies. The detective flipped through a file slowly, as if reluctant to ruin a life. "You said you don't remember where you were before the fire started." "I was asleep," she whispered. "Neighbors say you often left the stove on." "Never at night." Joshua was afraid of the gas smell. He nodded. Then, in the next breath, announced she was under arrest for arson and manslaughter, like he was speaking from another world where logic didn't apply. Lena didn't even realize how she ended up in handcuffs. She didn't scream, just muttered, "You're insane." But it didn't matter anymore. The village split between those who always knew and those who chose silence. "I saw her scream, Joshua, but no tears," one neighbor testified. "She lived alone with him, didn't work, maybe she was tired." The trial hadn't even begun, but the verdict was already decided in kitchens, at the post office, in the church where the priest murmured in his sermon, "Sometimes, brothers and sisters, evil lives closer than we think." In prison, Lena got a number, a uniform, kitchen duty, and a cellmate. She no longer had a name, just Sinner, as one devout guard called her. Chapel was every Sunday, but Lena never went, not out of pride pain. When she heard hymns, all she saw was Joshua's funeral, the white coffin, the short prayer, strangers lowering him into the ground. The first year passed in silence. She didn't answer questions, didn't engage in gossip, didn't weep or complain. The other inmates avoided her, then forgot her. Lena became a shadow. Then one day, in the library where she mopped floors, the chaplain walked in. He left a book in front of her job. No sermon, no pressure, just the book. And he left. Days later, she opened it. At first, without interest, then something inside her clenched. The story of a man who lost everything and was left with Godor without him sounded terrifyingly familiar. That was her first conversation in a year, not with anyone else, with herself. And from that moment, something in Lena began a slow, stubborn return not to people, but to life. 8 years passed. The world outside changed, but prison stayed the same gray walls, same rusty shower, same exhaustion in the women's faces. Lena learned the routine. She was quieter than most, but more observant. No one avoided her now. If anything, they respected her. The silent ones were said to carry the heaviest burdens. One autumn Saturday, she was called to the warden's office. A man in a suit waited there, with tired but honest eyes. An assistant DA, reviewing old cases for errors. "Your case raises questions," he said quietly. "Some evidence wasn't checked. There were similar fires nearby. One 3 miles from your house. Same ignition method. They called it faulty wiring." Lena listened. She didn't hope. She was afraid to hope. Too long, she'd lived without light. 2 weeks later, the case was officially reopened. Files were found, and in one a charred sneaker fragment from her house's ruins, untested before. Now, tested. The DNA matched a man already in prison for arson. The process was slow. Every step paperwork, signatures, approvals. No one gave Lena a timeline. Just told her to hope. But after 8 years inside and 10 years of solitude, hope was a foreign word. 3 months later, she walked out. No fanfare, no one waiting. Just a black jacket and a box holding that stuffed bear. The media barely noticed. Too old a story. No scandal, no politics. Just a mistake. A simple, terrible mistake. Lena left Oklahoma forever. Not out of fear. Because nothing remained, no home, no child, no faith in those who'd once been neighbors. They stayed silent now, too. No letters, no calls. She settled in a small town, volunteering at a foundation for bereaved mothers. At first, just sorting donations. Then she began to speak, without accusations, just listening. Until one day, at a support group, she said her name aloud. And for the first time in years, someone repeated it. While Lena rebuilt her life, the investigation continued. The DA's team found links between her case and a string of fires in neighboring counties. All shared the same method: bedroom ignition points, the same accelerant. The suspect, Roy Dennison, a handyman with a history of domestic violence and mental breakdowns. Jailed in 2012 for attempting to burn down a daycare. But only in 2023, in a prison psych ward, did he slip. In a manic episode, he rambled about cleansing sins with fire, children trapped in shadows, and the house with the blue door that shouldn't have been full. A guard recognized the detail. Lena's house had had a blue door. When shown the photo, Dennison didn't deny it. He just smiled, said he remembered the boy at the window and the fire bursting out like a confession. That sealed it. The charges against Lena were dropped, her name added to the list of wrongful convictions. But the exoneration brought no relief. She sat in an empty room, staring at the newspaper clipping and Dennison's other cases, thinking only one thing: if just one person had believed her, if they'd tested that sneaker, if they hadn't rushed, Joshua might still be alive. Freedom didn't come suddenly. It arrived quietly, almost mundanely. One morning, Lena walked through the prison gates with her box. Joshua's bear inside. A guard nodded goodbye. No one waited outside. Just an endless road and a hollow wind. The first thing that struck her was the noise. Louder, as if the walls had absorbed her hearing for years. Leaves rustling, a dog barking, a car horn. It hit her nerves like a blow. Strangers turned away as she passed, as if sensing something alien in her. Or maybe it was her, watching them through glass. She moved into a house provided by a charity. Her caseworker, Michelle, spoke plainly, without pity, offered help not just legal, but human. You'll need to relearn how to be yourself. Outside, glances still burned. Some recognized her from memory or rumor, but now their stares weren't accusatory, just wary. People didn't know how to treat a woman, first called a monster, then a victim. And Lena just walked forward, step by step, like on thin ice, each one pain and freedom. At a support group for bereaved mothers, Lena told her story for the first time. Without dramatics, without tears, calmly, like a chronicle. The women listened. Then an older one, with a wrist tattoo, said softly, "You survived where most would have broken." Lena didn't feel strong. She'd just not died. But that moment changed her. For the first time since release, she saw her pain could be a bridge, not a burden. She began speaking at groups, forums, schools, even universities, not as a victim of injustice, but as a mother whose truth had been erased. People listened, not always kindly, but attentively. Sometimes, after, someone would say, "Now I understand you can't judge by appearances." That mattered more than apologies. Lena became a witness not just to her fate, but to others' fears, doubts, shame. Her testimony became a tool not for revenge, but reminder. A woman's silence is not guilt. 2 years after release, Lena returned to her village, not for forgiveness, not for closure, just to see. Her old home was gone. A playground stood in its place as wings, a slide, a sandbox, all new, bright, foreign. Only one thing stood out. The gate was painted a deep blue. Lena stayed on the roadside, not approaching. Passersby glanced curiously but didn't recognize her. An old-timer might have known but looked away. She didn't cry, just stood, listening when children's voices, a bouncing ball, and suddenly realized that blue was no longer the color of pain. It was memory. Not the kind that cuts, but the kind that keeps you from falling. As she turned to leave, she felt no anger for the first time, just a heavy, quiet emptiness. The past hadn't vanished, but it no longer burned. Later, Lena met the prison chaplain again. He now ran a street mission for homeless women, many ex-inmates. She began helping first with food, then conversations, shelter. She didn't call it ministry, didn't pray aloud, but in her grew a faith not from sermons or sacraments, faith in survivors, in those who carried not holiness, but truth. Her church had no walls. It stood in alleyways, shelters, bus stops, and whenever she met a woman afraid of her own shadow, Lena said just, "I know, I remember, I'm here." And that became a beginning for some new, for some final, but always real. Lena Garrett's life didn't have a return. Only forward motion, not heroic, just stubborn. Each morning began with cheap coffee and the same route. Shelter, thrift store, library, shelter again. Joshua's portrait still hung in her home in a plain wooden frame, no candles or black ribbons. A reminder not of death, but the life that had been. Once, at a support meeting, a young mother approached, said she'd lost her son, said she couldn't breathe, that everyone told her time heals, but she didn't want time to heal because it would take the memory. Lena didn't offer platitudes, she just held her. Long, silent, and for the first time in half a year, the woman cried. Later, when a journalist asked why she did all this, Lena thought, then answered, "I live so they won't repeat my pain, not the loss, the silence. When the world says, you don't look like a mother, you don't look like a victim, so you must be guilty." Her voice wasn't angry, but it was strong, like a root breaking through stone. Lena no longer sought justice. She became part of it. And perhaps that's how from ashes not vengeance grows, but light.